Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to show you how to sharpen your pencils with an X-Acto knife, and I'm also going to demonstrate three pencil techniques called Grasp the Dragon's Tail, Cloudy Hands, and Tiger's Claw. And these techniques are from my method, which I call the way of the intercepting pencil. Let me show you how to sharpen your pencil. This technique can be done as well with charcoal pencils. I'm right-handed, so I hold the blade in my right hand and the pencil in my left hand, and I start back from the edge and I use my left thumb to push the blade and start to remove some of the wood from outside the lead. My right hand actually is not exerting any force. All the force is coming from my thumb. My right hand is simply guiding the pencil along. Starting back from about an inch to a quarter from the tip of your pencil gives you plenty of room to taper the point of your pencil. The first technique I want to show you is called Grasp the Dragon's Tail. And you hold your pencil, you don't want to strangle it. You want to hold it firmly, but with a certain amount of flexibility. Remember that the pencil is an extension of your hand and your fingers. And so if you squeeze the pencil too hard, you can lose sensitivity in your hand. And move it back and forth. You start to lay down tone, and you can broaden the amplitude of your movement. You can narrow it down the back of the neck. So I'm going to move my hand up a little bit closer towards the point. And now I can exert more pressure on the pencil, and I can get a darker tone. So, grasping the dragon by the back of the head, darker tones. Grasping the dragon by the tip of the tail, lighter tones. This technique is particularly good if you're shading flat planes, as for instance a cube. So let me just quickly demonstrate what I mean. So if I have the flat planes of a cube, and I'm going to go from here to this edge, and I'm going to imagine that the light is uneven across the surface, and I want to actually create a gradient. As I grade across, I'm actually lightening my pressure on the pencil, and I'm gradually lightening my pressure. So here is called a kneaded eraser, and it's a nice little eraser that allows you to mold it and fold it, blend it into different shapes. It looks very natural. So if I just draw in a sphere right here very quickly, and if I use, let's say that I use a grasp the dragon's tail technique, what I get is really a movement of the pencil that suggests a flat surface. And in fact, when you start your sketch of a sphere, sometimes it's easier just to grasp the dragon's tail to quickly map out and locate where you want your shadows and highlights to be. Now, if you look closely, you'll see basically that it's a very kind of a streaky technique. The diagonal lines leave their trace, and it's that straightness, that linearity that flattens the surface of what I would rather be perceived as something round. So that's where the cloudy hands technique comes in. Now, if I go back on top of this with a circular motion, essentially what I'm doing is taking out all those little streaky passages You know how it is when you get too much graphite on a piece of paper and you try and erase it, you can only get so much of it off, and then you're forced to live with the rest of it there as a kind of a ghost image. The other thing that's nice about this technique as well is that it really does bring out the tooth of the paper, the texture of the paper. It brings out the texture of the paper, and it really is becomes a part of the aesthetic. And you can see as it's happening before your eyes, as I add in those values, it does start to appear to be more volumetric. And one of the reasons for that is that dark values come forward and light values recede. And so since this is the nearest part of the sphere to us as opposed to on the perimeter, the value not only represents shadow, but the eye picks it up first, and it appears to be closer in space, so we're creating an illusion of depth. A tiger's claw sounds like something, and in fact it is something very sharp. And in order to do that technique, you do need to have your pencil relatively sharp and pointed. The reason is that we want to create a really crisp edge. So if I place my pencil almost flat, here's my pencil is about at 90 degrees from the paper, and so when I lay it down almost flat, you can see how close that is to the tip, right? So the pencil's almost flat onto the paper. Pencil down, when I move the pencil down, you see I get a kind of a really crisp, sharp edge there. It's almost like taking a razor blade. So that's great, and I'll show you how to use that. Now, behind my sphere, let's imagine my sphere is sitting on a tabletop, and the tabletop is light, but the background has some shadows in it, and it's the shadows in the background that are going to make the sphere pop out. So I want to create what's called a resist, so I want that dark value in the background to contrast with this light edge. So if I put my pencil on the paper, use the tiger's claw technique, you can see what a nice, sharp, crisp edge that is. Tiger's claw. Dragon's tail, which is the side to side, or cloudy hands, which is a round technique. Now, one last thing. When in your assignment, when you're drawing the sphere, you're asked to draw a cast shadow. And we learned a little bit about how shadows fall. And when a shadow falls further away from the object that casts the shadow, it forms something called a penumbra. And the penumbra is that soft edge at the edge of a shadow. So let's start out just by laying down some tone. All right, so I want to get a nice edge. now you can see why we allowed this to be a little bit lighter, because otherwise if we get too dark we lose the edge.